Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk
Hey.
VR. Today we're joined again with Robin Moulder. We had her on one time before with, another one of the developers of their studio, 3 Pound Games. I think last time we had on Cordelia and
Mhm.
her. This time we're joined with Robin Moulder, and we're so excited to have her back on. Last time we had talked about one of their games that was pretty trippy, and they have a new one out that's, to say trippy is an understatement. We've been having a blast. Dude, it's called Space Dragon Unchained, and you have dragons as arms. So it's freaking, come on. That's enough of a selling point right there. But we'll get into that more in just a few. But Robin, do you mind to tell us, in case our listeners didn't hear our first interview, a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about your studio as well?
Hi, I am Robin Moulder, and I come from a long history of music. I am a goth rock person from back in the day. I have a bunch of albums, have toured all over the United States, made it to the arenas and the whole bit like that. So I have quite the extensive background, but I also have an extensive background in engineering. So that's kind of how you get to how do you end up starting a game company? Is you kind of marry that engineering mentality with the music and the background and the creative areas, and boom, now you got a game company where you can really lean into leveraging all sides of your brain. Hence the name 3 Pound Games. 3 pound being the weight of the brain. So we're really into hiring super smart, talented people, heavy on the neurodiversity for sure. So 3 Pound is 3 Pound Games. We focused originally. We started off way back in the day, kind of with a bit of a mobile focus back then. I mean, I always knew this stuff was coming, but wasn't ready yet. And I've always been this big ViewMaster, insane person who's super into the stereoscopes and strobe things, anything that would sort of take us out of this world and into something crazier and more deep and on a new level. And when VR finally became commercially available, we pivoted 3 Pound Games to be a virtual reality company and focus heavily on things like, the Vive was one of the first ones out that we could really get our hands on. And Space Dragon is actually the first game we put out for real in the virtual reality space back on the PC. And so, as the evolution of a game company that's now really hard in immersive technology and in virtual reality and extended reality and playing around with different augmented reality, like everything, we're just super into anything immersive tech that's going to increase the way that we interact with technology, move the needle too on those interfaces. I can't believe that we sit here and use mice and stuff, and we're not just constantly putting, like, what year is this? We've all been there with Johnny Mnemonic and Minority Report and seen all these incredible movies, and we grew up with these things thinking like this is the way we're going to be interacting with computers, and we're almost there. We're so close right now.
Be I think people should know. Last time we talked, it's like I always assume that a developer is a developer and they only focus on their the products they're doing. But it seems outside of 3 Pound Games, you've been very active with getting involved in it. Just from watching your stuff and your profile, it seems like you're constantly doing something outside of what you're really doing with
Yeah,
3 Pound Games.
like community game nights, we were talking a little off air
Oh,
about
even
seeing that.
beyond that, it's
uh,
like I see it's just like an endless amount of
Convention
different things.
speaking.
Yeah. So I give you a lot of
Yeah,
credit for
yeah.
you're more than just focused on your project. You're really out there, I think, trying to either
Yeah,
either
I
get
think
the word
I
out
think
and
it's
or be involved in, all those different things.
it's kind of a lesson I learned back in the band days, and I don't think I appreciated it back then that you gotta be part of the community. You can't just come in and play a show and leave. And back then, I had less opportunities to do that because, I was working engineering, heavy, heavy engineering jobs during the day. And then I go play in my heavy metal band at night and on the weekends. And there was only so much I could do at that time to like really be actively involved because you just can't stay out to 4 a.m. every night and expect to function every day. So it was hard. It was hard to balance that. It was very difficult to be as deep in the community as I wanted to be and as I should have been. But now I can do it. Now it works. I have the balance just right. We have the capabilities of helping other developers and just, shining a light on the cool stuff they're doing. I just got back from GDC. My God, it was so cool. It was like I'm standing in these rooms with like I don't know, like 100 VR developers of all these cool things that you guys have all played. And it was amazing, like listening to everybody's stories, listening to the cool stuff they're working on. And sometimes I'm doing this thing where I'm like, oh my God, you've built the opposite game to what we've built. We should get together.
No, that's awesome.
I met that Gods of Gravity. Have you played that game?
Oh,
Yeah,
we're big fans of them.
they're
Oh my
freaking
God. It's
awesome.
it's 100% the opposite of Space Dragon. Like
Yeah, top-down strategy, but they're a three-person studio.
Dude, they're so young. I said I'm older than both the developers.
They asked us for some suggestions about their game when we interviewed them on air. They're like, "What would you add?" We gave 2 suggestions, and 2 weeks later, it was in
It
the
was
game.
added. Yeah.
Like they
yeah, good for
hustle.
them. Good for them. I love the hustle. Yeah, yeah. And I met the CEO from Real Fishing, and I love fishing in video games. Um But, would I go out and seek a VR game that's just fishing? Probably not, right? Probably wouldn't do that. I've played a few other ones that have been kinda too cartoony or whatever, and in general, I don't really like hyperrealism in VR because if I wanted that, here I could just do that right here. So, I was a little skeptical that I was gonna like it, but instead, I have fallen deeply in love with Real Fishing, and I'm playing it all the friggin' time. So
we loved
I'm
Real
actually
Fishing.
today I'm hoping to catch some sharks, so it is shark season. But yeah, I mean these are those kind of things where when you can go and actually get to know some of the other people in the community, you're going to go outside of your comfort zone a little bit. You're going to go try other things, kind of like what you guys do as well. You go and you interview people. It sort of forces you, like, well, I got to go play this game now. And I bet sometimes you are completely surprised, like, oh wow, I thought this was going to be too cartoony or too silly, and that's not really my jam. And then all of a sudden you fall in love with it and it's your favorite game ever. And that's what we need to do is we just need to get more people to see that they need to just try stuff. You don't know. You don't know what you're gonna like in VR until you're in there. And sometimes what you think that you like in other domains, like if you like a certain board game, you might love it in VR. You probably didn't like the board game in real life, or just a type of a game. Um, there's just so many puzzle games that I have played that I probably wouldn't be into in like just sitting there on paper doing it, but because it's physical, because it's manipulative, it taps into, more parts of my brain. And it kind of lights everything up, and you're like, okay, this is really engaging now. So that's kind of what I dig about virtual reality and just extended reality in general. Is it really engages people in ways that they are surprised by, and with the way that the world is today, it's really hard to surprise anybody with anything because it's all been done. It's all been shown on television. We've all heard that song. We've all seen that movie. And now it's time for something new. And this is it.
Dragons as your hands. We talked a little bit last time about like VR being the perfect avenue to get silly. Like I even brought up Loco Dojo with having the
Crab
the,
hands.
the crab hand. So I mean, I'm emphasizing the dragon hand part in it because it's pretty freaking cool. But tell us a little bit about your game, Space Dragon Unchained, and then maybe we can get into the original version that you said was actually your first game. I'd love to hear some of the differences. But first, for our listeners that haven't explored that gem yet, tell them a little bit what is Space Dragon Unchained.
Well, you start off the game and you're not there. You are just two dragons. You are two little dragons, like little puppets. It sounds ridiculous, but when you play the game, it just makes sense. So each hand can do whatever it wants to. Each dragon can fly you and the other dragon. So if you fly one dragon this way, you're going to go that way. The other dragon's just along for the ride. If you point them both in the same direction and you fly, then they're going to go that direction and you can warp. So if you hold one, you go slow, you hold the other one, you go slow, whatever direction he wants to go. But you hold both and then you go into warp mode, which is pretty cool. So the whole thing is you've been captured by something, you don't know what yet, but you come to discover that it's the evil AI, which is really timely these days. So, well, we wrote this a long time ago, so we saw the future. Um, and you're trying to escape. So first you have to escape, and then you are on now this epic adventure to save the galactic megafauna from the AI. They've been captured inside suns, and one of the things that we've done recently in this last release, I think it was February, we extended some of the gameplay in these areas. So you go around and you have to kill all the satellites on the planet, drop the shield, then blow up the planet. So you're getting some major friggin' explosions in this game. It is extraordinarily cathartic. So if you're having a bad day, be sure to pick up Space Dragon because you'll just blow shit up all night long and you will love it to death because it's just fun to fly around and blow up worlds. Makes you feel very powerful. And then you get to save creatures. So the next thing is you're going to go and go release them out of the sun, and then you have to get the AI off of those creatures. So there are a few moments in there where you can make choices. The Leviathanos, for example, can be saved or destroyed. Keep that in mind while you're playing it, because you might want to play it a couple times for the multiple endings there. And also with the Phoenix has that kind of like, if you start destroying the eggs, you'll notice that it gets darker and maybe less happy looking. And if you save it from all of the different satellites that are controlling it, then it starts to get prettier and prettier. So we're kind of leveraged a little bit of the choice into this with still keeping it a pretty simple go around and blow shit up kind of shooter. The Kraken now has a big area now, a city that you have to go through, which is super fun. This treatment just like it's just magical, like because you're when you do a lot of indoor and outdoor environments, and the outdoors is open space, and then you get shoved into this passageway. It does this sort of architectural thing that you see with like high end architects do when you go like a cathedral or some really intense area. They always sort of do this shove you in narrow passageways and then blast you out, and you have this feeling like this wow moment, like, "Ooh, this is huge. This is really intense." And that's what happens in Space Dragon too, because we're constantly shoving you into small spaces and then we're blasting you back out into space where you're free to roam around with the dragons and go anywhere you want to.
I love the way your mind. It must be crazy to be inside your head sometimes to put all that together. One of the things I do want to bring up, and I think it was the first thing I said to you when I played it was, I am so grateful you kept the flying mechanics into.
That whole movement system.
Oh my god, it's almost one of those you think it and you move kind of situations.
Well, you don't need to learn it. It's
No,
natural.
yeah, it just
You know,
feels right.
I hadn't played that movement system since the last time we played the last one, and
Uh-huh. It
it
was the
took
same
me
thing. The movement system
took me
was
2 seconds to get it.
so I was so grateful you had that in there for flying.
Mm-hmm. Do you want
Yeah,
to?
I really love that movement system. This is actually how the game was born, was out of that movement system. So we made one of the earliest things we ever did in virtual reality was Chris, our technical director. He was so into trying to figure out a way to come up with unique and different movement systems. If I want to walk, I could do that now. I don't need VR to walk, right? And it doesn't really make any sense. Like that's just silly. Like why use my legs like a sucker? So why don't we fly more? And we're all really into that kind of mentality where like let's do different things. Let's just do the same boring stuff over and over and over again. And the flight movement system just fell in love with that immediately. And we knew we needed to make like many games with flight. Like we have a whole list of crazy flight games, and you can only do so many things. So Space Dragon was it. And in Vault, we also fly in Vault, but we use the rubber band. And the difference there being with Space Dragon, it's sort of a point, grab, and go. any direction you want to go. If you want to go behind you, you can do that. You put your dragon behind your head, which is kind of fun too. But better have some good sea legs for that, just in case. I don't really find that to be awkward at all, because again, it's intention. If I have the intention and I'm like, yes, I'm going this way, my brain goes, yes, I'm going this way. And if I know I'm doing this, I feel okay about that as well. Users need to try that on their own, of course. And in Vault of Stars, we use the sort of similar but slightly different movement system, which is that you grab and then you pull out from your chest, so that it's like a rubber band. So actually, what we call it, rubber band movement system. And if I go like this, like a joystick, and I go that way, I'm going to go that way. And if I pull out fast, I'm going to go much faster, because it's sort of like how your mouse moves in some ways of, this to this, and then how fast did you go? Okay, well, that's how much faster I'm going to make you go. So that works really well in Vault, because we wanted to be able to have users like go up close to something and maybe look at things on a wall, or inspect items. And with the Space Dragon movement system, it's a little harder to get that precision. And in Vault, we like that precision with this, because you can be like, oh, I'm just going to inch my way over to that area and check it out. So, we're always kind of looking for like what's the best fit there. And we had talked about in this version maybe switching Space Dragon to Rubber Band, and decided that it was really better the way that it was, because you just go bullshit up. Like that's what the game's all about.
No, I commend the movement system. It works perfect for it.
Yeah, like you said, very, very natural.
Mhm.
And so
Very natural flying your dragons around.
So how did this game come to be? Like, what was that meeting room like? You said it was the first game you released on PC. I can't even imagine where this starts, besides with maybe some external influence, to say the least. It's a very very psychedelic environment. How did this game come to be?
Yeah, there were a lot of external influences. There was the Chris and I are super into Star Trek. I mean, like big Star Trek nerds. And he was playing a game, and I can't remember the name of it, sadly, but there definitely were some dragons. There were dragons involved, and there were some space event things going on. So he definitely had some influences in that as well. And he and I really wanted to go and do a space game. Cordelia, on the other hand, is really into fantasy. She's really the vault heavy influence there, and we're really more the let's go make lots of spaceships and stuff like that. So this is sort of like how do you get the creative director hooked on this project? Okay, it's dragons. It's dragons. Because she's really, really big into dragons. Apparently, they used to call her the Dragon Lady back in the day.
I find that hard to believe. She was funny.
Yeah, she was really cool too. And I mean, is there any differences between this
That's what I was
re-release
wondering. The PC
version,
version.
yeah, and the original, or is it kind of a 1-to-1?
It was a port. So if you go back in the day, there was definitely a lot more visual stuff going on, and Cordelia had taken it upon herself. I don't remember when this was now, maybe a year and whenever it was, like maybe 6 months before we actually released it on App Lab. Cordelia had just decided, like, you know, we've learned so much. Like we've learned so much in Unity, and Unity has come a long way too. Every time we turn around, there's like a new release and a new this and a new that. And a lot of times that increases optimization paths and just gives us more flexibility for things that we can do inside the same container. Because this is what we're dealing with, is when you're dealing with a quest, like you only get this much and you got to make it all fit in this box. And that means there's a lot of optimization. So the PC build, was like this, and it had to come down to this. And she was like, I think I can do this. And she just ran off and just made it work. So once she got it far enough along, she's like, hey guys, we can do this. Let's do this. And that's when we started like kind of doing okay, well, what do we want to add? How do we want to make this different? So it is the same base game. It's been vastly improved in a lot of weird ways. We did URP update. I think that's the last release, the URP update. If you have a Quest Pro, you can really see the difference. It's just so clear and so beautiful. Um, I I mean, I'm kind of blown away, like, when you're just standing there looking at the planets and looking at the detail of everything, and you're just talking to your dragon. It's just so incredible, and post-processing effects were added. There was just a ton of performance boost across the board. And then recently, the in that same recent update, that's when we started expanding levels, and that's where things start getting dramatically different from the very old version, because now we're increasing the gameplay in certain areas. One problem with the was like 2017, I guess, version, is that we had a tough time balancing this for the players that were out there at the time. We made the game very hard at first, and nobody could play it. So yeah, unless you were a developer on the game, then you
Yeah.
had it down. Um, we used to call that Cordelia hard, because she kept amping it up. Like, she's the one that was making it very difficult. She's like, "This is too easy. People could just fly around." Problem with 360 space and enemies is, like, enemies coming and shooting at you, just fly over here, right? You could just drift your way around, and people would figure that out, if they were like a developer mentality. But if you were new to VR, you don't think like this because you're not familiar with, like, just navigating the 360 space, because you're always stuck to this earth all the time. So you just don't have that. You don't have that yet. So we made the game much easier, and now that, like, people in VR have gotten a lot more familiar with, like, traveling and that kind of mentality, we can now increase the difficulty again. And so we've been working on that, and that means adding lasers to lots of stuff. The Kraken, goes in,
Mhm.
changes weapons, and Kraken's got lasers coming out of everywhere, and Leviathanos now has lasers coming out of his, like, whenever you destroy some stuff, when you move to the next stage, he then has lasers shooting out to really mess with you, because you think, "Oh, this is easy. I'm just gonna gun down here and shoot him up," and then all of a sudden there's a laser shooting out of his head, and you're like, "Oh, I guess I better watch out."
That's that's pretty badass. The game is interesting concept, great execution, and graphically, you were saying like, oh, it's improved so much graphically. Right from the load in with the 3 pound games logo with the two dragons, instantly I
Mhm.
was like, oh wow, that's already exceeded my visual expectation.
Mhm.
And then you go in and there's the space environment looks beautiful. The planets are again past my detail or past my expectation of detail. Yeah, the game's graphically pretty impressive for an App Lab game. It was a lot more than I was expecting in that regard.
And it performs well.
Oh, I don't
I
think
didn't have any issues.
no frame rate drops or like bugs or choppiness or anything like that. So, I mean, how long did this game take to I
Poured
guess
over.
yeah, port over, re-release? I mean, I know you kind of gave a little bit of a head start with it being, you know,
Yeah, I'm always
released
curious
once.
how hard it actually is to take something, and this is the perfect example because
Yeah.
we've seen it done with other games, but I don't know the actual process to port over.
In some ways, is it more difficult,
Yeah,
in a
that's what I
weird
was
way?
curious.
I think it depends on what it is. Sometimes we have pulled stuff, dusted it off the shelf, as you will, and gone, "What the hell were we thinking?" Because you've learned so much, and every way that you used to do things, you've changed, and so then you end up essentially redeveloping it. But because it's all there, because the art's all there, you already have all the sound effects, all that stuff's all there, you're just re-implementing certain areas. So it does give you a lot of lift. It's kind of like if you've ever had one of those, like, projects that's due, and then suddenly your computer crashes and everything goes to hell. And maybe it took you, like, 2 months to get to that point of where the project is quote unquote done, but then something bad happens and somehow you're able to, like, pull it all together in like a quarter of the time, because you already worked out all the hard stuff. So that's where you get when you redevelop, is like you already know all the stuff that went right and went wrong, and now you know a lot more about how to develop in Unity, and our process is improved. I mean, we have an entire core systems and libraries that we've built over the years for movement, interaction, like just sound, like everything you can imagine in ways that you do development in VR. And we have a development library that we've built for it, or we have a procedure for how we do things. So the fact that we have all those things down means we're kind of like following our own recipes as we're sort of improving our recipes as well. So that makes it easier because we're going like, oh, wow, yeah, I remember how we used to do this. Yeah, that's got to go. That's got to change. Every once in a while, you let things go through because you're like, well, we're just not going to change that right now. So we've seen that with Space Dragon. I can pick on my own area. I have re-implemented audio 3 times on this project because no system does what I want. Unfortunately, the last implementation time, I just didn't have time to flip it over to the new system that I want to use, which is Fmod, and that's on the roadmap now. So I'm still limping along with a audio system that it does a lot of stuff. It just doesn't do it as well as I'd like, and it is just deprecated. Like a company bought it out, and nobody has ever updated it again.
Mhm.
So that's always bugging me. Every time I get in a headset, I hear some like, I don't like the way that sounds, and I want to go tweak with it. Then I'm doing the like, well, maybe it's time to just go ahead and re-implement it to the new system that I want to use instead of deal with that any longer. But that's a major overhaul. It cuts through like the entire game in every way possible. And yeah, I'll get left in the fact that I've already identified a lot of sounds and some of those won't change. But then I'll also be doing maybe I'd like, a higher variability in that type of explosion. What could I do about that? You know what I could do is I could send the variable back to Fmod, and then it could change the parameters for that when it comes back through. And then like every time it would be slightly different. Yeah.
I think that's
The music
music
background. I was thinking the same thing. I was
oozing
like,
through because I'm like, to the normal person, they'd hear it and be like, sounds freaking great.
Yeah.
How can it sound better? But to
a professional.
professional, yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, dude, you
That was my first thought
It's
right
gotta
away.
go. Yeah.
Well, there's a perfectionist mindset that I've picked up both in this interview and our last
first
interview.
one, yeah. You
So
think?
some have a feeling that your projects are never necessarily quote unquote done. Like you said, Unity will pump out a new update, and then it's, oh, we need to do that. Then there's a roadmap of things that you want to do, but you haven't gotten to yet that you could probably occupy your time for easily 2 years. So it's not a question that we're asking because, oh, this game is too short, there's not enough into it. It's a question that I ask every developer in
Mhm.
regards to every game. It's just always a fun one to throw out. Is the game done in terms of content, or is there more to expect in the future? I mean, I know it's a port, so it's probably, I'd imagine the book's closed, but it's always a good question to ask.
Oh, the book is far from closed, and I don't know whose quote this is, but it's something along the lines of art is never done, you just stopped working on it for a while. We have a lot more updates for Space Dragon planned. There's just an endless roadmap. We added those events in the last version in the February update. There were more. There's a lot more ideas for events. There are a lot more level treatment areas for. We did Kraken, the Phoenix got an update, and Leviathanus got an update to increase the level. I think the Leviathanus is my favorite because you're like, oh, do, I'm gonna go get the Kraken. I'm sorry, Leviathanus. I'm gonna go release it from the sun, and then this big ball comes open, and opens up, and you're like, oh shit, I got to go in there now, and then it's this laser maze, and you weren't expecting that. So we want to do some more of that too with the AI, that huge pile of triangles level. That is the AI place, and it's we did expand some of the gameplay in there when you had to go down each one of the rooms and solve each one of those room areas. We did increase that gameplay a little bit with like these cool bubbles that come at you, like I don't know what we're calling those, like almost like electrostatic in a lot of ways. They definitely hurt. Um, but we'd like to do more. Like there's ships come in at the beginning. It should be a even bigger, more ridiculous fight. All of these things can be expanded on in a lot of different ways to really showcase how pissed off the AI is at you for A, escaping, and B, starting to release the galactic megafauna, because I'd be kind of pissed off at that. You're ruining my power sources. So I'm going to let you have it. One thing that's coming up on our roadmap is to do more lore, because a lot of times you don't always know what's going on in all of the things. People pick it up. People see I blow up a planet, there's a metal core left. That's interesting. Like, why is that? And I've had people totally kind of nail internal development discussions based on things that they've picked up in this. The environmental storytelling is there. But it'd be fun if you like flew over to some of the derelict ships and your dragons got to listen in on like some of the communication that's going on, like around. And what if we put AI in this game that is the AI? Like, how cool would that be?
Nobody will ever finish it. It'll just take over the game.
Just
It'll
be
be a,
they'll just be sitting there talking to it all day.
yeah, that'll be a wrap.
Yeah. No, I'm one of those people that go crazy for lore. I even had it on my list of questions, what is the lore of the game? I have a feeling that it's one of those things that internally, like if we ask you real quick, what's the lore of the game, you'll be able to probably go very in depth with it, but one of those that you really have to pay good attention to kind of gather it all. I think you touched on it a little bit at the start too, but what is the full lore of the game? I was joking when I was playing it. I was having a blast, by the way. I was peeing myself laughing. I burst out of the containment area. I was like, dude, I am freaking Space Godzilla right now. Like, you cannot hold me down. You're going to destroy everything. So I was having a blast, but what is the lore of the game kind of from the creator themselves?
Yeah, so we try to keep this pretty lightweight and let the game tell us the story. And it has evolved over time. So the AI is just going around and collecting galactic megafauna, really to basically turn them into power sources. So that's why they're captured in the suns, and it when it captures the golden dragon, we've had a lot of debates whether or not that's mommy or not. I tend to think of it as the mommy dragon because, I'm a baby dragon. So is that not my mommy dragon over there? So when she or he or whatever it is gets captured, that's when I'm going to go run off and like, now I got to get out of here. So that character is essentially helping me escape. That's one thing that isn't necessarily clear, I think, because you hear the roar at the beginning. You hear that roar, and then you hear the explosion, and then suddenly the shield's down, like suddenly you can now shoot your way out. So that's like a little area that isn't as clear, that's helping you escape. And I think sometimes we've even argued about that, whether that's actually what's going on here, or was it just because maybe he or she was trying to escape and they screwed it up. Like, we could go a lot of different ways with this, but I do feel like that character helped you escape because, and then gets recaptured. And the AI, of course, has captured all these other ones. So at this point now, you're on a mission to really save your whatever that golden dragon is to you, whether it's your mom or whether it's your second cousin dragon, whatever you want it to be. And I think that once we kind of get deeper into putting the lore drops in, we'll have to make that decision as to what is that character to you. But we always wanted Space Dragon to be the kind of game where we're only giving you a few bits here and there about our outline, and we wanted you to fill in some of the story on your own, because that's fun too. Like, it's like when you play with old school Lego and they're just little bricks, and you made a little airplane, you're flying it around, and then the next person walks by and picks up that little airplane, and they're like, oh, that's not a little airplane, that's something else, and they hold it in different orientation. And that's amazing because it creates a lot more emergent gameplay when you're free to come up with stuff in your own imagination. So, Vault, conversely, is very story heavy handed. And Space Dragon was more of a, okay, well, let's just go blow some shit up and leave enough story to make it interesting for the player to pick up on where we're going with this. As we add more lore drops in there, now we're going to start pinning down the story a little bit more and creating some more color and a variety of interests for like what is the AI and what's the voicing of that. We did a little bit of that in the trailer with the AI talking in the trailer. So that was kind of a step in that direction of okay, now you know the AI. It's actually me, by the way. The AI has a personality. um, and we'll do more of that as well. So as you hear more from the AI, you're going to learn more about that character as it develops. But right now, we don't know everything about the AI. So we'll figure that out as we're doing it. And any game developer that tells you they have figured everything out from day one is probably lying to you, because this is how all art goes. It's rarely like, sure, you have an idea and sure you have an outline of what's going on. But when you're dealing with a kind of a team mentality and where everybody's contributing to the story and contributing to the level design and different factions of the game in a lot of different ways, you know, people come in with different bits and suddenly it's like, oh, yeah, no, yeah, that's really cool. Okay, it fits, but it also shifts the project a little bit. And that's cool. I love that. I think it's so much better when projects like this sort of emerge and change over time and grow into something ever so slightly different than the original couple people had in mind. It just makes for a way better project overall because it's just cool.
Well, it's definitely organic
Yeah, and you
because
can't
it's
say
ever evolving. It's always gonna, that's conceptually though. I like the idea of having to fill in a little bit of your own, because two people can play it and each one have their own fill-ins of what they think something might be.
yeah,
So
like I said, I played it and I was, Space Godzilla, destroyer of worlds in my brain. Not everybody's gonna have that same interpretation. Some people are gonna be like, I'm just getting free. I was like, no,
Space Godzilla.
I am malicious. I'm here to destroy everything, but not everybody's gonna have that same interpretation of it. So it is kind of cool to have the reader's input. And you mentioned the game has multiple endings, so right off the top, there's replayability. How you behave. How you want to take things as Mr. Space Dragon over there. But on a single playthrough, how long is the game in total? Of course, we were even saying last week that sometimes that's a hard
Yeah,
question to
that's
ask
loaded. If
because
you're a completionist, you're gonna.
and how much do you just spend dicking around doing nothing, just flying in circles. That's me a lot of the time too. So my time usually takes longer. But on average, what would you say the average playthrough time is?
If you're really good at flying through 360 space and really conceptually understand that sort of thing, you could probably get through the whole game in like 40 minutes. But most people are not that person. So I'd say it's probably more like a 2-hour game right now, and we're going to be expanding more gameplay as we go along. So this is what we're doing is we'll just keep filling out more and more areas. If you want to go fly off and just screw around and shoot stuff. Some of the wormhole spawner, I mean, you could sit there for an hour just shooting those things if you're so inclined to do that. I've been inclined to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, we tend to get lost in, like, we'll see like some consensus on a game and be like, oh, they said it's a 2-hour game, and then
No
2 hours
way.
I'll realize I'm nowhere in this game yet. I'm just screwing around.
Yeah, I spent almost 2 hours in the opening bedroom of Vacation Simulator before I even stepped foot
I
and
mean,
actually
right?
started
Yeah.
the game. So how can you tell me that's a 6-hour game or whatever when what should have been 5 minutes was 2 hours for me? And you don't think I was spinning and like flying in circles, just being silly in this game? Of course I was. So it's hard. It's sometimes I'm probably never going to be the 40-minute playthrough
Speed
person
run.
in this game. No, there's no way I get lost too easy. Lost in immersion, I'll
Yeah,
say.
I mean that's great, and that's what you should do in VR too. Like
Hmm.
this is comfortable, this is enjoyable. Then why wouldn't you want to just stay there and really look at the detail and hang out? Like that's the beauty of it all. And that's part of why we also made those other areas. So when you finish the game, there's a boss gallery. So if you're going to go back, you can see all the bosses and just hang out with them. They're like in these other kind of cage things. If you go fly inside there, you go get to hear their theme music again, which is kind of cool because now you can hear the theme music without all that shooting. So you go, oh, that's an actual song here.
Did I'm gonna ask, like, what was your involvement in the song aspect of it, or the overall game music of it?
Oh yeah, that's all me. Yeah.
That's all
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure it would
Yeah.
have been difficult to
Metal.
outsource. That you would have been like,
Right.
no, just no way. If
Yeah,
you're
I
not
did.
happy
I
with
did pull
the
in. I did pull in some friends. I got a old friend of mine, Mark Damien, that had to do some drum treatment on. I think it was Levi Thanos. He did. Oh, and the AI too. Yeah, because he's definitely back in the goth rock metal days kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, for sure, it's just a freeing experience to work on Space Dragon because like the kind of work that I would do before, I had to focus on like a song. Like you have to make a song, has to have these parts. When you work in game development and when it's like a shooter and fast and frenzied thing, it's the engagement level. So I'm setting up essentially what are scenes for a song and say this is a low engagement area, this is like a little more intense, and this is oh my god, shit's happening. And then I'm cycling through those based on like, where are you in the phase of the game, which is cool because I don't have to worry about like, oh, is the vocalist gonna wanna like to have a special chorus here? It's like, no, the chorus is me blowing the face off of a kraken. Like that's the chorus. Let's go. Destroy, destroy, destroy. And the challenge there is you also have to consider how will this stuff sound with lasers, with missiles, with this, and will it compete too much? Do I need to pull back? I found that with this last update, when we added all the new areas for the Kraken, and that's the indoor Kraken City, essentially, it was an area where if there's no place to go in some of these things. This happened in Phoenix as well. So you go into the Phoenix, and there's a big sort of magma looking. It's not actually magma, but that's what it looks, sort of reddish kind of thing, coming out of the sun. It's like wow, it's really loud. And the first time that it comes out, what I do is instead of like, you're like, oh, we show up and it's just a regular level theme. I guess I'm going to hear that again. And instead, as soon as that sound hits and that bubble starts to form, the level theme goes out. And you're like, oh shit. Oh, this is not good. And but it gives the player an opportunity to more clearly hear all the different sound definitions going on around. Because now, when you go fly by one of those asteroids, some of them are just happy little asteroids. You can go hide behind with your dragons and look around at the thing that's about to expand onto you and blow you up. But sometimes you're like, oh, I'm just gonna duck behind this asteroid, and there's a motherfucking missile right in your face. You're like, I didn't know it was this one. But you need to be able to hear that because you hear the click, you hear the like the chink click, and you're like, oh, oh, I picked the wrong asteroid to hide behind.
I I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Um the music score in games is a new area that we've tried to give like huge appreciation to, but it's when I'm hearing you talk about like laying it out so like like something important is going to happen. It's the same thing they do in Hollywood for like scary movies or action adventure. They bring you on that ride with the music.
Yeah, it you should know that you're about to get scared just by the
The sounds.
sounds,
Yeah.
or not that there's anything scary in this game. It was just an off the top example, in the same way that you should know shit's about to go down just off the environmental music. So
Again, that music background just oozing out into as if you're not busy enough just developing games and working on that.
yeah, well, I'll put that to the perfectionist statement from before too.
Correct.
But
I won't argue.
at this point in time, in 2023, how big is the studio of 3 Pound Games?
So we're up to 17 people. Like
Wow,
we're
that's
getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
that's big for
yeah. And
VR.
we do. Yeah, it's they're not everybody's doing VR. So we do also do Java Enterprise Application Development as well, and which is really nice too because VR is not just all VR, right? It's also metrics and analytics. How do we know anything about a game? We rolled our own metrics and analytics platform called Reality Link. So we have our own rig of like, hey, I know how many planets have blown up. I know in Vault of Stars how many people have collected motes, that sort of thing. So these are all things that we're, over time going to roll out more and more interesting things about. Like I always wanted to do posts in whatever social media is still exists in 2023, like number of planets destroyed today. Like I could do those posts because we have the metrics on that. We can also do things like test to make sure that players aren't stuck in a certain area, so we could see that data. So it's good to have in your studio. It's always good to have like other types of developers that do other things, not just Unity, because you kind of need a lot of those things for integrations. And there's always something like when we start doing an integration for the if we should choose to do the AI as the AI, I mean, we're going to need to integrate with that. So we might need to tap into one of the other people in the company and say, hey, how does this work from an API standpoint?
I'm just happy to hear 17 people.
Yeah, like I
that's
said, I know you said it's not all VR, but still, I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
that's bigger than last time we had talked too. So I love to see it. And you're one of
Yeah.
the companies that are smart in the sense of, we always say a community manager is essential.
It's
It's
worth its weight in gold.
yeah, it's sometimes it's hard as the developer or even as the creator of any artistic endeavor to be the one that engages with feedback or just engagement in general is, sometimes it's better to have somebody else do it. So you clearly have your head on right with that, and you're smart to kind of go out to the enterprise things, really tune in on the analytics. That's how you are able to see, where players get stuck, what they enjoy, what they do. So that's awesome to hear. And what's next for Robin Moulder and 3 Pound Games? Is it keep working on the current projects? Do you have more up your sleeves? What's
Well, we
the
know there's a board, so
Yeah, we know there's a whole roadmap just for this game.
yeah.
So, that's that. But overall, what's the next year or two look like for 3 Pound Games?
Well, there's a lot of new headsets coming out. Perhaps you've heard.
Yo,
Yeah.
yes.
So
2023 is loaded.
it is super loaded, which is extraordinarily exciting. We just met all kinds of headset manufacturers at GDC. Definitely looking to bring Space Dragon to some of those additional ones. That like the Pimax was just delightful. Like I know it's huge, but it was cool. Like just imagine Space Dragon on that, the clarity of that, and the extra field of view, that sort of thing. So we definitely want to port to some of the other headset manufacturers out there. We've got some super secret, fancy treatments that are in the works right now to really satisfy the what about that Quest 3 um, thoughts that everybody's having, like what's going to happen there. So that's really exciting. There'll be more news on that in the summertime. We started up another project that is something that I personally have always wanted to do for years now, and it just wasn't time yet, but now it's time. And this is a multiplayer game. It's a don't think kind of game where we're so deep on our games. Vault is so deep, and even though Space Dragon's light story wise, it's an intense kind of game, and we thought it would be nice to have a more accessible opportunity to just build whatever the hell we want to build. Like any dumb idea you've ever had, maybe we could put it in this game. So Grocket is it's like WarioWares meets Mario Party, and it's hand tracking. To initially, it's going to be of a hand tracking focus. It's multiplayer, and it has deterministic physics. So right there, that's a lot of fun, even if you don't even have a game, because you're just throwing shit at each other and just laughing and having a good time. And then, of course, now imagine like putting a little bit of a game structure, very lightweight game structure around it, that everything is a micro game, very short. You just drop in. For example, one of them is Chump, and it's a callback to a game that we started working on for mobile ages ago called Sharks for Arms, and you show up and you have sharks for arms, and there's fish all around you, and you're just competing for the fish. This is stupidly fun. It's stupidly colorful and silly. And if anybody told me that I would like this game, I'd probably would say like, oh, it's going to be too boring. But the reality is, because it's physical and just fast paced and doesn't require you to stop and read a lot of directions or learn how to do stuff, you just do it. You just do the stuff, and then you're playing the game. And that is sort of our now test bed play area. It's going to satisfy a lot of our need to go make lots of cool, fun, new stuff, because we can throw it in Grok it. We can try it out in Grok it and see if people like it, and we can learn a lot about a lot of new systems that we want to dive into. I mean, think about all the new stuff coming out. Like eye tracking's been the thing for a while. Yeah, maybe the Quest 3 is going to really have it down, and maybe like having a level where you're lasering stuff with your eyes, like that's the whole level where you're just blowing stuff up with your eyes, and it's done in 15 to 30 seconds, and that'll be a cool way for us to just engage more with the community as well, because it'll be just fun and silly and give us an opportunity to have little breaks away from the heavier games. So it's a nice balance all around, and it's going to showcase all of our core systems and libraries, because we're taking all of our stuff and saying, here's what our stuff can do. Like the super show off, here's what our stuff can do in the shortest amount of way possible.
No, I think it's
So
genius.
Mm-hmm.
And it is exciting. There's a ton of headsets coming around the horizon. But
Yeah,
I was curious. You mentioned Quest 3, and I was curious if it was definitely going to be an improvement when the Quest 3 does come out. But I think you already kind of answered it.
Yeah, and
I mean,
let's be
I think so. I think so. The Pro is nice. The Pro certainly is not as consumer ready as I would like it to be, just because it's got some wonkiness about it. But man, it saved me so many hours of development time, because it's faster. It starts up. I plug it into Unity, and it's like, oh hi, you're ready. Oh, ready to go. And that's huge. The Quest 2, a lot of times I would go like, oh, I just got to go adjust a few sounds on this thing real quick, and then by the time I get to the part of where I'm going to do the work, I'm it's already been like 20 or 30 minutes, and I'm like, I've drifted off to something else, because I like the context switching happened on me. So you could just imagine how much better all of this is going to get with the Quest 3, not just from a development standpoint, but from a user perspective. We lose users in VR if it takes too long to onboard them anywhere in that chain. So the second that you're standing there with somebody, you're like, all right, hang on a second, let me get this thing on. Okay, all right, hang on, I have to configure the room. I gotta set up boundaries, and every second they're losing interest. I need to just shove it on their head, and there you go, play. Then you can get them hooked. Because I mean, you guys know what it's like, that moment when you put somebody in there that first time, and it's a great wow factor, but you can't put them in a complex game. You got to put them in a simple game that's easy to get, easy to understand, and you
Demio
can give them.
walkabout.
Yeah, Walkabout's great. Walkabout's great for that, because you're like, it's golf. You already know how to
Mhm.
play this, and now all you have to do is know that just use one controller. Most people can figure that out pretty quickly. So yeah, there's a whole set of games that we've all sort of gravitated toward to like put people in for the first time. I'd really like Rocket to be one of those games, because you shouldn't have to understand anything. We're going to leverage the latest technologies like hand tracking, so I don't even have to explain the controller to you. I'm just going to stick it on your head, and you're going to just reach out and do stuff. Like, oh, okay, I'm doing VR, like in the best possible way, where you're just spazzing out and having a great time, and basically I'm turning you into a 4 or 5-year-old, which is the best moment ever. Just running around and acting like an idiot. Yay!
Well, and multiplayer VR is hot. Let's be real. That's
Mhm.
where, me and him, that's where we end up having our most fun, especially, cooperative gaming, or, even like I mention it a lot. I think it's an underrated game, Loco Dojo, kind of like that Mario Party-esque competitive party multiplayer game. Those are
Not to be taken
awesome.
serious at all.
No, no, and they're just meant to be silly and have fun and laugh with your
Yeah.
friends. And it's cool that you mentioned, while the Quest Pro isn't exactly the most consumer forward headset, it's great for development. That kind of, well, people often laugh at the marketing of it being a professional headset and stuff like
Yes.
that. That kind of, fits that narrative that, hey, it's not the best consumer.
It really
but
is, in fact, a professional headset.
yes, but for those using it for development and for work, it will it's worth its weight in gold, it sounds. So that's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Basically, that the extra money you paid there, you made up for by getting some development time back in your life, and that was worth it. Especially now being only $1,000 instead of 1,500. Like that's a little more palatable for most people as well.
and then you get color pass through too, which is probably the most tempting thing
Yeah.
about it to me. That's my number one thing. I'm like, if the Quest 3, I think it needs pancake lenses and color pass through, face tracking, eye tracking, all would be a bonus, but I think that color pass through, and please give me pancake lenses. I haven't tried
Yeah,
pancake
no, I
lenses yet,
agree.
and
Oh,
I want to try
they're
them.
gonna have
So
they're gonna have pancake lenses. I
you got to.
guarantee it.
I think the
Yeah, yeah.
finding this.
I was actually dreaming of the day that we're not talking about pancakes anymore. We're talking about like paper lenses
Yeah.
of
Well,
something really ridiculously thin. Like what's the next layer after pancake? Like what's smaller than a pancake but bigger than a piece of paper?
well, that's how we get to the
Credit card.
goggles. But it goes back to what you said about, you want to just be able to put somebody in VR and they're there, they're ready to go, no setup or anything. You know what your sweet spot is on the Quest 2. At this point in time, you can probably put on your Quest 2 and it's boom, you're ready to go. For somebody on their first time, I remember what it was like starting out on the, you're
Oh,
like,
adjusting the headset.
I
Yeah.
think it's blurry, but to try to fully explain that to somebody and you can't see what they're seeing. So how do you know, you
And
know,
how they're saying it, like, it's like
mhm.
twofold. It's not even like,
Are they
do
even
you just have the headset crooked? Like, do you wear glasses or contacts? Is that actually causing any sort of interruption with the way that the headset is on your head? Are you familiar enough with how clear this should be? Or do you have some kind of preconception that
exactly?
this is probably not gonna look that great, so therefore the fact that it doesn't look great, you think it's okay?
Yep. So you're giving the wrong feedback. You're like, hey, is it blurry? And they're like, no, because they kind of go, well, that's what it's supposed to be, or vice versa. They keep saying, yeah, it is blurry, even if it is right. Versus with pancake lenses, you'll have the confidence of just being
It
like,
is what it is.
try this out. You're in the right spot. It is what it is, exactly what you just said. So
Yeah.
there's no, I think that that's going to be great for demoing VR, for spreading the word, for just showing new
I
users.
just want more processing power, because I
Yeah.
know if developers can get their
Yeah,
hands on
yeah.
more processing power,
Mhm.
we're going to see instant results to games, whether they pre-exist and they just make them better, or the new games that'll be developed specifically for that
Yeah.
additional processing power.
I was even joking last week. I know the trend is to go lighter, and I'm down for it because in order to get VR to where people eventually want, you need the goggles and everything. But I'll be honest with you, I have a big head, I have a thick neck. I don't mind a little bit of weight right now if it means a little bit more power for standalone too. So
Mhm.
I'm just saying, I
I
know the
just
Quest.
I don't understand the resistance though to have a outboard piece for your pocket.
You're talking about like kind of like the Apple rumors with like
Yeah, I mean that's what Apple will do, of course, because they already have you in every way possible between the watch, the phone, and it's going to be amazing, and that is going to move the needle in so many big ways because they already have all the killer apps ready to go. And I've been like telling so many people how Apple has already converted you to a digital creature with the emojis. Like you're all set. You're gonna flip up FaceTime. It's gonna be like, "Hello," and
yeah.
you're gonna be blown away. Like they've been working on this for years,
I,
and we could do all this today with the Quest. It's just that because people aren't going to take the time to make their meta character properly and make it all nice, it creates a bit of a problem. Even though that stuff's like gotten so much better. I know the characters aren't great, but they're okay. And when I'm sitting there fishing and real fishing with somebody, it's working for me. It's good enough, and it's quite enjoyable. And if people would just, give some of that stuff a shot, they would really have a good time.
Yeah, sometimes we laugh a little about the Apple headset here, but it's not about the actual headset itself. It's just about the delays. It's like, oh, will it ever come out? But I'm pretty confident any product
Yeah,
Apple
they're
releases.
flexing now. Anyways, they seem pretty confident it's coming.
Well, I don't. Apple tends to have commercial successes recently, not too much commercial failures. I think my joke would be if they sold a watch, they can probably sell a headset.
Yeah,
It's a watch, bro.
it's the price though.
Yeah,
It's
that's the price. Well, to me, it's
But
more the delays.
they sold a watch for what, $1,000. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah. So
Cell
it's
And
phones are
that's what
over a grand.
they'll do. That's what they'll do with the headset as well. It'll go after the high end tier, and then it'll slowly move its way down into the regular people who
to
can
me, it's
afford
just though when I
who will
hear
afford it.
the rumors that it'll be announced in 3 months, I go, I'll see you in a year and a half, But we'll see. We'll see. I think I have the attitude. I've said it many times. The more headsets on the market, the more
The
players,
better.
the better. Yeah. Who loses like that?
Oversaturation of headsets would not be a bad thing.
No, let's hit that point and then we can deal with it, right? But I mean, developers have more
Yeah.
ecosystems to release content on. Consumers have more headset choices. It causes, developers to stay competitive with prices, or sorry, headset manufacturers to stay competitive with their pricing, to stay competitive with store content. I think everybody wins like that. So
Yeah, that helps developers a lot too, because they come to us looking for content instead of us chasing them, which is really cool. And then you're like, oh, okay, so there's an opportunity over here. And you mean we could take Space Dragon around the world? Yeah, I want to do that.
that's freaking awesome. So, we usually try to keep things around an hour for interview. That's the time that I always say we start to pickle up.
Our hostage hour.
Yes, a lot of our listeners might know we often record on weekends and stuff. So we're taking a developer with a roadmap with probably whiteboards full of things that they want to get done. We're taking them on a hour on a weekend to talk to us. We're pretty selfish people in that regard. So we're definitely appreciative of you taking the time to, talk with us. But before we let you go, first off, Strauss, anything you want to ask before we
No, I mean,
let Robin
I
go?
probably talk for 2 or 3 hours.
That's the thing.
I want to talk like you still playing instruments.
Yeah, the musical side. Yeah, there's so much that we could talk.
But
So
whatever.
But that leaves room. that leaves good room for a part 3.
Part 3.
So then before we
That's right. We could do a deep dive on the music insanity.
before we let you go, is there anything else that you want to plug or say to our listeners? Maybe let them know where to find 3 Pound Games and yourself on social media, all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. So we are 3poundgames.com. Pretty self-explanatory there. All of the stuff is linked there. We do have a link tree. You can find that on 3 Pound Games, a link tree. That's easy. I am also going to be speaking at iLearn for, I think it's their adventure series on medical projects with a focus on fall prevention and suicide prevention. It's a couple of so one of our enterprise area type focus things in VR. So we do nurse training, kind of like outside the surgical suite sort of thing. That's May 19th to the 20th. And then I'm speaking at AWE, which is the super big, awesome conference. I hope you guys will be there. And I'm going to do a big mixed reality talk called Expand Your Reach, Ditch the Controllers, and Jump into Mixed Reality.
That's freaking awesome.
No, that sounds like a fun one.
But that's what I was saying. Like the workload is not just
3 Pound Games. No, it's
nurse training, medical speaking at AWE.
We're just at GDC. Unfortunately, we weren't at GDC. GDC and PAX East seem to have some sort of date rivalry going on right now, and GDC unfortunately
and
seems to win.
South by was right before. It's this.
Oh,
like,
and that was the one in Austin, or
yeah, it was. Yeah, I just got done. I just did the pen. The INVRHA Bob Fine. That was amazing, by the way. What a great conference that was for like medical focus VR. Incredible. Then I headed over to the Polys for the Poly Awards. We were a sponsor there, and I got to be like vol capped, shoved into the metaverse. That was super cool on the red carpet. And then like half the people in the room were like, "Oh, I'm going to South by," and the other half were like, "Oh, I'll see you at GDC." You're like, "Oh, this is not cool. I want to do both." It was possible, but not likely, right? And then PAX is right after that, and it's like, wow, how are we supposed to do all these things?
No,
you can't.
Yeah,
unfortunately, it
was GDC won the VR though.
Oh my goodness,
it was amazing. Yeah. There was just you would think that gaming was just all about virtual reality.
That's what I heard. I heard right when you walked in, you
old
had
school people were complaining. They were just like, "Oh my god, this is just like when mobile took over." You're like, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yep, we're dogs peeing on the tree right now. We're taking over, marking our territory. Even PAX, there's only like six or so VR booths there.
Mm-hmm.
But the booths that were there,
crushing it.
Dude, some of the
crushing
most
it.
packed, always lines,
Well, Pokemon had a fucking huge line.
Yeah, well, they had the biggest booth
Like
on the
2.5
whole
hour
floor.
wait to.
Yeah, but nonetheless, it's like you walk by the Demio Resolution booth, there's a line. You
Oh,
walk
yeah.
by the Peaky booth,
Yeah.
Peaky Blinders booth, there's a line. You walk by
Yeah,
the
what kind of
Mid-Hell.
booth you walk in? I
Yeah,
didn't
right.
see that one.
The
mid-
piggy booth.
The
I gotta
piggy
make that
booth.
booth. That'll get a lot of attention.
the medieval booth, a line. Even a bowling game 2 years in develop or 2 years away in alpha called Pin City. It
Yeah.
had a huge line.
217.
Yeah, from Studio 217. Yeah,
17.
nobody was leaving the demos going, I'm nauseous. People were going, wow, like saying very positive
Yeah.
Just
things
wish there
about
was
VR.
more of it. I'm hoping next year there'll be
Unfortunately,
more of it.
I'm hoping that
Unless this is just the way it is now, where you're gonna have GDC and PAX like like literally you'd have to fly right over.
Well, one of three things happened. So either it completely stole people away from PAX. That happened to one large group. Like you said, dude, there was conferences right before. How are you going to do all of them? So either it stole people away. There were some savages that went straight from GDC. Then they
Mhm.
went and visited PAX the last 1 or 2 days. But unfortunately, as a developer, you can't get a booth. You could, but is it really worth it to just do a day or two, So then, you saw some developers come and just kind of hang out those last couple days. And then there was some teams like Resolution's a pretty big team. They were able to do a booth at GDC and at PAX and kind of just run two simultaneously. I'm hoping by this time next year, the scene's even bigger and we can see even more companies do that. Just run two
do
booths.
both. Yeah.
I think that's the way to do it. Don't try to split. I'm sorry, don't try to run the same people dry. Just boom, two booths. But that's a kind of optimistic as well. Hopefully we get to hit more conventions. That was definitely
Yeah, I definitely
one of the
want to go
funner
to
things.
GDC.
Mm-hmm. If any
It's
of our
so
listeners,
it's so worth it. It's so worth it to go and just hang out. And plus we're all just, seeing each other in person. It's an great photo ops, which we can all get up on socials and again, show more people that we're doing this thing, that this is happening. This is real. And look at all these friggin' people who are in this technology. Like, this wave is here now, and you can read every news article you want to about the metaverse being dead or VR being dead, and I can tell you it is not, because GDC was overrun with virtual reality developers, booths, interest. It was all over the place. It was super cool.
Robin, 2 years ago when we started this podcast, I remember, we had just bought our Quest 2 like 6 months ago. I used to read people say online that the Quest 2 wouldn't sell 1 million headsets, and it sold 20 million. So the bar of expectation of people has risen ridiculously in 2 years. To say anything's dead or a failure, when I heard people say they wouldn't sell 1 million and now they've sold 20 million, yeah, go kick rocks. VR is bigger than ever, and it's only going to keep getting bigger.
Oh, it grows every day.
If people think this year has been ridiculous with content releases with games, wait till the new headset with the Quest 3 drops, and people are going to go nuts. I'll be the first in line. So yeah, VR is bigger than ever. And as a Ruff Talk VR listener, if you enjoyed our PAX East coverage and you want to see us hit more conferences like GDC and AWE and all that stuff, we're kind of like a free to play game with no monetizing. I would probably scold myself if I interviewed my seats.
Yes, free DLCs.
Yes, we give a lot of free content. There's not much monetizing in our podcast. We like to just put out the content, but if you enjoy the product, you want to see us hit these conferences, as a listener, you can always go join our Ruff Talk VR Patreon, where we have some cool perks, some on-air shout-outs once a week, access to our exclusive Discord server, all that fun stuff. So you can find the link for that in our show notes. I'll also, for this episode, put the Twitter and such for 3 Pound Games and the link to Space Dragon Unchained, the game that we talked about a lot today. But 3 Pound Games has a lot of cool other stuff. So definitely check out their Twitter, their Discord, all their website, all that stuff. Robin herself, Robin Moulder, she's definitely worth a fun look into. We touched a little bit on the musical background in the beginning, but like Stratus over here said, I think we could do a whole episode on that. So.
Yeah, I know some of the music background, but we definitely didn't.
We've had her on twice, and we've yet to go a deep dive. We're saving it. We're saving the good stuff.
I called Robin a rock star, and that was as far as I went. I think in the first time we spoke.
Yeah,
and
so
I was like, I'm not touching the music career because
But I doubt this
Set
is
of
the
respect for the development career.
I doubt this is the last
Yeah,
time.
exactly. That's exactly the right move there because I never want it to be about my background when these are team projects
Mm-hmm.
and it takes a whole lot of people to make an incredibly cool thing like a Space Dragon or a Baltasar. It is not about me. It is about this team being absolutely amazing.
No, you're humble, but that's why the team in the game is successful. But I don't think this is the last time we've heard of 3 Pound Games. The last time we're gonna have Robin Moulder on the podcast. So if you enjoy this episode, subscribe, rate us 5 stars. Go join our Discord. Go join our Patreon, all that fun stuff, and check you out next week. Ciao, ciao.
Bye, guys.